Emily lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her eyes wide open. The clock showed it was past midnight. The soft hum of the air conditioner filled the silence, yet her mind refused to rest. She turned on her side, then on her back again, pulling the blanket up only to push it down moments later. The emptiness of the room pressed against her chest. Mark, her husband of over 20 years, was sleeping soundly beside her, his breathing steady, his face turned away. She envied his calm. For months, his presence had felt more like that of a roommate than a partner. They shared a house, but not a life. Emily finally slipped out of bed, careful not to wake him. She padded softly across the wooden floor and walked into the living room. The moonlight streamed through the large window, casting silver patterns on the carpet. She sank into the couch, pulling her knees close. Her eyes stung, though she hadn't shed a tear yet. She hated this part of the night, the quiet, when thoughts grew louder. Memories of her younger days with Mark played in her head. The way he used to surprise her with flowers, the long drives by the coast, the laughter that once filled their home. Those days felt like they belonged to another couple, not to her. Emily had always imagined that midlife would bring her peace, maybe even joy, with the children grown and independence finally within reach. But instead she felt hollow. She missed being seen, being wanted. The more she thought about it, the more invisible she felt in her own home. She had not said these things out loud to anyone. Not to her friends, not even to her sister. To confess it out loud would make it too real. So, she carried the weight in silence, night after night. The floor creaked, pulling her out of her thoughts. She turned her head quickly, wiping at her eyes before any tears could fall. Standing there, half-shadowed in the hallway, was her son Daniel. At 21, he had returned home from college for the summer. He looked surprised to see her awake. His hair was tousled, and he wore an old t-shirt. His expression soft but curious. "Mom, you're still up?" he asked quietly, as though afraid to disturb the fragile stillness of the night. Emily forced a small smile. "Couldn't sleep," she replied, her voice low. "Go back to bed, sweetheart." But Daniel didn't move. Instead, he walked over and sat down beside her on the couch. His presence carried a warmth she hadn't realized she needed. For a long moment he didn't ask anything. He just sat there, shoulders touching hers lightly, giving her the comfort of company without demanding words. That simple act almost undid her. Her throat tightened. "You've been sad lately," Daniel said finally, breaking the silence. His tone wasn't accusing, just observant, almost tender. "I can tell." Emily looked away, embarrassed. She had tried so hard to keep her struggles hidden from him. "It's nothing," she said quickly. "Just tired." But Daniel shook his head gently. "It's not nothing, Mom. I see you." Something inside her cracked at those words. She felt the sting in her eyes grow stronger, and this time she didn't fight it. A single tear rolled down her cheek, and she quickly brushed it away. Daniel reached out, resting his hand lightly on hers. "It's all right," he whispered. "Just go with it." Emily froze, caught by his words. They were simple, yet they carried a depth she didn't expect. "Go with what?" she asked, her voice trembling. "The feelings," he answered softly. "Don't fight them. It's okay to let them out. You don't always have to be strong." His tone was calm, reassuring, like he had known exactly what she needed to hear. Emily's heart twisted. For years she had played the part of the strong wife and mother, the one who held everything together, even when she was falling apart inside. No one had told her it was all right to let go, not her husband, not her friends. Yet here was Daniel, her son, speaking with a wisdom that startled her. She closed her eyes and more tears followed. She didn't sob or break down. Instead, they flowed quietly, a silent release of the pain she had been holding. Daniel didn't say anything more. He simply squeezed her hand and stayed by her side. Emily felt a strange mixture of guilt and relief. Guilt for leaning on her son in this way. Relief because for the first time in so long, she felt seen. Minutes passed in silence, broken only by the sound of her uneven breathing and the quiet hum of the night. The living room felt softer now, less cold. Emily glanced at Daniel, noticing the way his eyes held steady on her, filled with patience and understanding. She wondered when he had grown up like this, when the boy who once ran through sprinklers and begged for bedtime, stories had turned into a man capable of carrying her pain, even if only for a moment. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice cracking. Daniel gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Always, Mom." For the first time in months, Emily felt the tightness in her chest ease, if only slightly. She wasn't alone. Not completely. She leaned back against the couch, her tears slowing, her breathing calmer. The words he had spoken, "It's all right, just go with it," echoed in her mind. She didn't fully understand them yet, but they lingered, offering a strange comfort. As the night stretched on, Emily felt her eyelids grow heavy. She leaned her head gently on Daniel's shoulder, something she hadn't done since he was a child. He stayed still, allowing her to rest. And though the problems in her marriage hadn't changed, and the loneliness hadn't vanished, Emily knew something had shifted inside her. A door had opened, and through it came the faintest light of hope. But beneath that quiet moment, a question stirred in her heart. Why did Daniel sound like he knew more than he was saying? The next morning, Emily woke to the smell of coffee drifting through the house. For a moment she thought it might be Mark, but when she walked into the kitchen, she saw Daniel at the counter pouring 2 mugs. He looked up and smiled, a little tired but kind. "Morning, Mom. You didn't sleep much, did you?" he asked, sliding 1 mug toward her. Emily took it, grateful for the warmth between her hands. "Not really," she admitted. "But thank you." She sat at the table, watching him move around the kitchen so naturally. It reminded her of when he was little and insisted on helping her cook, spilling flour everywhere but looking so proud of himself. Now he was grown, and the roles felt reversed. He was the one taking care of her. Daniel sat down across from her. His eyes studied her gently, but his voice was firm when he spoke. "You've been carrying something heavy, Mom. I can see it." "You don't have to hide it from me." Emily hesitated. She had always believed that parents should protect their children from their problems, not burden them. Yet the way Daniel looked at her gave her courage. She sighed, staring into her coffee. "It's not easy to explain. Lately I feel alone. Even when your father's right there, I feel like I'm invisible to him." Her words came out quieter than she expected, but once spoken, they could not be pulled back. Daniel didn't look shocked. He nodded slowly, as if he had suspected all along. "You don't deserve that," he said softly. "You've given so much, Mom. You deserve to be seen." The way he said it made her throat tighten again. She blinked quickly, trying not to let the tears fall. "It's been years since we really talked," she whispered. "Your father and we share the same house, but not the same life anymore. I don't even remember the last time he asked how I was." Daniel leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "That must feel awful," he said. "But you're not broken. You're just forgotten. He doesn't see the woman you still are." Emily stared at him, surprised. His words cut through the fog in her mind like light through heavy clouds. She had never said it in those exact terms, but he was right. That was exactly how she felt. Forgotten. Left behind while life went on without her. "I don't know what to do anymore," she admitted. I keep hoping things will change, but every day feels the same. Empty. Daniel reached across the table, covering her hand with his. You don't have to figure it all out today, but you can't keep burying it either. It's all right to feel what you're feeling. His touch, his words, they gave her a comfort she hadn't felt in years. She wanted to lean into it, yet at the same time guilt pressed down on her. She was supposed to be the strong one. She was supposed to protect him, not rely on him. But the truth was, his presence felt like a lifeline in a sea she had been drowning in. For a while they sat in silence, sipping their coffee. Emily watched him, noticing how grown-up he looked, how much wisdom showed in his face. She wondered how her son, barely out of college, could carry such insight. It made her proud, yet unsettled her. Finally, she asked quietly, "Daniel, last night when you said, 'It's all right, just go with it,' what did you mean by that?" He looked down at his mug, swirling the coffee before answering. "I just meant, don't hold it in. Let yourself feel it. Don't keep pretending you're okay when you're not. You've been strong for everyone else for so long. Maybe it's time to just be human for a while." His answer was simple, but it carried more weight than she expected. Emily's chest ached at the truth of it. She had spent years plastering on smiles, forcing herself to carry on as though everything was fine. But inside, she had been crumbling. "You sound like you've lived this before," she said softly, half wondering if something had happened to him at school that she didn't know about. Daniel hesitated, then shrugged. "I've seen things. More than you think. People hurting. People hiding it. I just don't want that for you, Mom." His words stirred unease in her. There was something behind them, something he wasn't saying. She didn't push, not yet, but a seed of curiosity planted itself in her mind. What had he seen? Why did he sound like someone carrying his own secrets? Emily stood and carried her empty mug to the sink, trying to shake off the heaviness. "You've grown up so much," she said, her voice soft. "Sometimes I forget you're not that little boy anymore." Daniel smiled faintly. "Still your son, Mo. Always will be." Her heart swelled at his words, and she turned away so he wouldn't see the tears forming in her eyes. She couldn't remember the last time she had heard such warmth directed at her. That day passed slowly. Emily went through her usual chores, tidying the house, folding laundry, preparing dinner. Mark came home late, barely greeting her before disappearing into his office. She watched him from the kitchen doorway, his shoulders hunched over the computer screen, his phone buzzing every few minutes. He didn't look up. He didn't notice her. The distance between them stretched like a canyon, too wide to cross. Later, when she sat alone on the porch as the sun dipped behind the trees, Daniel joined her again. He carried 2 glasses of iced tea, handing one to her. They sat quietly, watching the fading light. "Do you ever feel," Emily asked suddenly, "like the life you imagined slipped away without you noticing?" Daniel thought for a moment before answering. "Maybe, but sometimes it's not gone, it's just waiting for you to find it again." His words hung in the air, soft but powerful. Emily turned her face toward him, studying his expression. There was something deeper in his eyes, something he wasn't saying. And for the first time, she wondered, was he protecting her from something bigger than loneliness? The question stayed with her long after he went inside, whispering in her mind as the night settled around her. The next morning, Emily felt the quiet tension in the house before she even got out of bed. Mark had left early, as he often did, without so much as a goodbye. The bed was cold on his side, the pillow untouched. Emily sat up slowly, brushing her hair back, and looked around the room that no longer felt like hers. It was decorated with things Mark had chosen years ago, but none of them seemed to reflect her anymore. She sighed, pulled on a sweater and walked downstairs. Daniel was already in the kitchen, cooking eggs in a pan. The smell filled the room, warm and comforting. He turned when he heard her, offering a small smile. "Morning, Mom. Hungry?" She smiled back, though faintly. "You're spoiling me." "Someone has to," he said lightly, though the words carried more weight than his tone suggested. He set a plate in front of her and sat down with his own. They ate in silence at first. Emily studied him across the table. There was something about him that felt different this summer. It wasn't just that he had grown into adulthood. He carried himself with a calm strength, like someone who had seen more than his age allowed. She wondered again what he had meant when he said he'd seen things. After breakfast, Daniel suggested they go for a walk. The day was clear, the sky soft blue, the neighborhood quiet except for the sound of birds and the distant hum of cars. Emily found herself relaxing as they strolled down familiar streets. They talked about little things at first. His classes, his plans for next semester, the neighbors who had just moved in. But slowly, the conversation shifted. "Mum," Daniel said suddenly, his voice serious. "Do you ever feel like Dad isn't really here? Even when he's home?" Emily froze, startled by his directness. "Why would you ask that?" He shrugged but kept his eyes forward. "I notice things. The way he avoids talking to you. The way you look. Sad sometimes?" Emily's chest tightened. She wanted to protect him from the truth, but she also knew he had already seen more than she realized. "Yes," she admitted quietly. "It feels like he's somewhere else. Like I don't matter anymore." Daniel stopped walking and turned to face her. His eyes searched hers, full of concern. "That's not true. You matter. You matter more than you think." Her throat tightened at his words. She had needed to hear that, even if it came from her son. They continued walking, but Emily's mind stayed with his comment. Why did he speak with such certainty, as though he knew something she didn't? That afternoon, Emily tried to busy herself with chores, folding laundry, watering the plants, tidying the living room. But every time she looked at Mark's things, his jacket on the chair, his shoes by the door, her chest filled with heaviness. The distance between them was no longer invisible. It was written in every small detail of their life. Later, as the sun set, Daniel joined her on the porch again. He carried 2 cups of tea this time. They sat together, the air cooler now, the crickets starting their evening song. Emily found herself speaking before she could stop herself. "I miss the way things used to be," she said softly. "Your father and I, we had something once. We laughed, we dreamed together. Now it's like I'm living with a stranger." Daniel's expression was thoughtful. "People change," he said carefully. "But sometimes it's not about change. Sometimes it's about choices they make." Emily turned to look at him sharply. "Choices?" she repeated. "What do you mean?" Daniel hesitated, his jaw tightening. "Just that. When people stop trying, when they stop choosing each other every day, the distance grows. It's not your fault, Mom. It's his choice too." Emily felt her pulse quicken. His words carried an edge, as if he knew more than he wanted to reveal. She leaned closer, searching his face. "Daniel, is there something you're not telling me?" For a moment he looked like he might speak. His lips parted. His eyes flickered with something like guilt. But then he shook his head quickly. "No, I see things. I notice how he acts. That's all." Emily didn't press, but doubt gnawed at her. His hesitation, his careful choice of words, it felt like he was protecting her from something. That night, when Mark finally came home, Emily watched him from the kitchen. He barely acknowledged her, dropping his keys on the counter and scrolling through his phone. She wanted to ask him where he had been, why he always seemed so distracted, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, she stayed quiet, her questions unspoken. Later, lying in bed, she couldn't sleep again. Her mind replayed the day Daniel's words, his hesitation, the strange weight behind his reassurances. She turned to look at Mark, who had fallen asleep almost instantly. His face was calm, unreadable. She wondered if he dreamed of someone else. She turned back toward the ceiling, her heart aching. Daniel's voice echoed in her mind. Sometimes it's about choices they make. What choices had Mark made that she didn't know about? She didn't have the answers yet, but deep down she felt it. The truth was there, just beneath the surface. And Daniel knew more than he was willing to say. Emily closed her eyes, but sleep didn't come. Only questions, heavy and endless. The following evening, Emily could no longer ignore the questions swirling in her mind. All day she had replayed Daniel's words. The hesitation in his voice, the way his eyes had looked away when she pressed him. She sensed the truth was close, waiting to come out, and she needed to hear it, no matter how much it might hurt. After dinner, Mark retreated to his office as usual, the door clicking shut behind him. Emily cleared the table in silence, her hands moving slowly, her chest heavy. When Daniel walked into the kitchen to help, she looked at him with tired eyes. He didn't need to be asked. He picked up plates and began rinsing them at the sink. They worked quietly side by side, the only sound the clink of dishes and running water. Finally, Emily dried her hands and sat down at the table, her voice low but steady. "Daniel," she said, "I need you to be honest with me. The other night you said it's about choices. You said people stop choosing each other. What did you mean by that?" Daniel froze, his back still turned. He let out a slow breath before setting the plate down carefully in the sink. When he turned, his face was calm, but his eyes carried the weight of something he had been holding back. He sat across from her, folding his hands together. "Mum," he began gently, "I didn't want to tell you because I didn't want to hurt you. But I can't keep it from you anymore." Emily's heart pounded. She gripped the edge of the table, bracing herself. "Tell me," she whispered. Daniel's voice dropped even lower. "A few weeks ago, before I came home, I saw Dad. I was out near campus, at a cafe downtown. He was there with a woman. Not just as friends, Mom. The way he looked at her, the way they talked. It was different. Too close." Emily's breath caught in her throat. She blinked, as if she hadn't heard correctly. "Are you sure?" Daniel nodded slowly. "I watched for a while, hoping I was wrong. But I wasn't. I could see it. And when he left, he didn't see me. I didn't know how to tell you, so I kept it to myself. That's why I said what I did that night. It's all right, just go with it. I meant, you don't have to pretend anymore. You deserve the truth, even if it hurts." The words struck her like a blow. Emily leaned back in her chair, her hands trembling. For years she had felt the distance, the coldness in her marriage, but she had convinced herself it was her imagination. Hearing it confirmed tore through her. Tears blurred her vision, hot and relentless. Daniel moved quickly, kneeling beside her. "Mum, I'm so sorry," he said, his hand resting gently on hers. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you, but you can't live in the dark anymore." Emily shook her head, struggling to speak. "All this time, I thought it was me. I thought maybe I wasn't enough anymore." Daniel's grip tightened. "Don't you ever believe that? This isn't about you. It's about his choices. You've given everything to this family. You've loved him, cared for him. If he turned away, that's on him, not you." His words soothed her like a balm, but the wound was raw. Emily buried her face in her hands, silent tears shaking her shoulders. Daniel stayed by her side, patient and steady, letting her cry without judgment. When she finally lifted her head, her voice was weak. I don't know how to face him now. Every time I look at him, I'll see that woman. I'll see the lies. You don't have to decide tonight, Daniel said softly. You don't have to figure it all out at once. Just breathe, one step at a time. Emily studied him through her tears. How had he become so wise, so calm in the middle of the storm? She felt both grateful and guilty. You shouldn't have to carry this, she said. I should be the one protecting you. Daniel shook his head. Sometimes it's not about protecting. It's about being there for each other. Right now, you need someone. And I'm here. The house was quiet around them, the hum of the refrigerator the only sound. Behind the closed door of his office, Mark remained unaware that his secret was no longer hidden. Emily felt the weight of it pressing down on her chest, but she also felt something else: relief. The truth was painful, but it was real. And real was better than the endless guessing, the silent suffering. When she finally stood, Daniel helped her to the couch. They sat together, the glow of the lamp casting soft light over the room. Emily leaned against him, too tired to fight the flood of emotions. I don't know what I'll do, she murmured. You don't have to know yet, Daniel replied. But whatever you choose, you won't face it alone. She closed her eyes, resting her head on his shoulder. His words echoed in her mind, steady and sure. For the first time in years, she felt supported. The betrayal burned deep, but she wasn't carrying it by herself anymore, not as the night stretched on. Emily drifted in and out of thought. She replayed memories of her marriage, the good years and the slow unraveling, the laughter that had long since disappeared. She wondered how long Mark's secret had been there, hidden in plain sight. She wondered what kind of future lay ahead, whether forgiveness was possible, or if this was the end. But one question loomed larger than the rest. How would she confront her husband, knowing the truth her son had just revealed? That question lingered in her mind as she sat in the dim light, Daniel's steady presence beside her. She wasn't ready yet, but she knew the time would come. And when it did, nothing in her life would ever be the same again. Emily barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mark in that cafe, sitting across from a woman who wasn't her. She pictured him smiling, leaning close, speaking in ways he hadn't spoken to her in years. The betrayal stung deeper than she could describe. By dawn, her decision was clear. She couldn't keep living in silence. She had to face him. The morning moved slowly. Emily went about her routine, but her hands trembled as she made coffee and set out breakfast. Mark appeared from the bedroom, dressed for work, tie neatly in place, phone already in his hand. He barely glanced at her as he poured coffee into a travel mug. That small gesture, the lack of eye contact, the indifference ignited a fire inside her. Mark, she said firmly, her voice louder than she expected. He stopped, startled, and looked at her. What? We need to talk, she said. Her heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. Now, Mark sighed, clearly impatient. Emily, I'm late. Can it wait? No, she replied, shaking her head. It can't. Something in her tone made him pause. He set the mug down slowly and faced her. What's this about? Emily took a deep breath. I know about her. The woman at the cafe. Mark froze, color draining from his face. His eyes flickered with shock, then settled into something harder: defensiveness. Who told you that? It doesn't matter, Emily said quickly. What matters is that I know. So don't deny it. He rubbed a hand over his face, his jaw tight. For a moment he looked like he might lie, but then his shoulders slumped. It wasn't serious, he muttered. It just happened. Emily's chest tightened, anger and heartbreak colliding inside her. Not serious? Do you realize what you've done to me? To us? You chose her instead of talking to me. You chose secrets instead of honesty. Mark looked away, shame flashing in his eyes. I felt alone, he said quietly. You were distant, always wrapped up in the house, in everything else. I needed something. His words sliced through her. I was distant? Mark, I was here every day, holding this family together while you pulled away. Don't you dare put this on me. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Emily's uneven breathing. Mark had no reply, and his silence was worse than any excuse. Finally, Emily spoke again, her voice quieter but firm. I can't live like this. Not in a marriage built on lies. If you can't be honest with me, if you can't choose me, then maybe this is the end. Mark opened his mouth to argue, but Emily lifted her hand. No more excuses. I don't want to hear them. You made your choice. With that, she turned and walked out of the kitchen, her heart pounding. She felt both shattered and strangely lighter, like a burden she had carried for too long had finally been set down. That night, after Mark had left the house in tense silence, Emily sat on the couch staring at nothing. Her thoughts swirled, her emotions raw. When Daniel walked in and saw her, his face filled with concern. Mom, he said softly, sitting beside her. You talked to him, didn't you? Emily nodded, her eyes glassy. He admitted it, tried to say it wasn't serious. Can you believe that? 20 years of marriage, and he throws it away like it meant nothing. Daniel's jaw clenched, anger flashing across his face, but his voice was steady. I'm sorry you had to hear it like that, but at least now you know the truth. Emily leaned against him, tears sliding down her cheeks. I don't know what to do now. My whole life feels like it's breaking apart. Daniel wrapped an arm around her shoulders, holding her close. You don't have to have all the answers tonight. Just breathe, one step at a time. Remember what I said. It's all right, just go with it. You're not alone, Mom. I've got you. His words wrapped around her like a blanket, soothing her even as her world crumbled. She let herself cry quietly against his shoulder, the weight of years of silence finally pouring out. Hours passed, and they sat there together, saying little but sharing everything in that quiet space. Emily felt fragile, yet Daniel's presence steadied her. He was her anchor when everything else felt unmored as the night wore on. Emily realized she stood at a crossroads. She could choose to patch up a marriage built on betrayal, or she could begin again, painful as it might be. The thought terrified her, but beneath the fear was a flicker of strength she hadn't felt in years. She closed her eyes, exhausted, her son's arms still around her. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like she didn't have to face it alone. Still, one question burned in her mind. Was this the end of her marriage, or the beginning of something entirely new? The morning after her confrontation with Mark, Emily woke with swollen eyes and a heavy heart. The house felt different, colder somehow, even though the sun was streaming through the kitchen window. She could hear Mark moving quietly in his office, avoiding her as he had done so many times before. For the first time in years, Emily didn't feel the need to chase after him or smooth things over. She simply let him be. Something inside her had shifted, something firm and unshakable. She made herself a cup of tea and sat by the window, staring at the garden she had tended for years. The flowers bloomed brightly, unaffected by the storm in her home. Their resilience gave her strength. She realized she had spent so long focusing on holding her marriage together that she had forgotten to hold herself together. Now, it was time to change. Daniel entered the room, his hair messy from sleep, and sat across from her. How are you feeling? he asked gently. Emily looked at him, her lips curving into the faintest smile. Broken, she admitted, but not helpless. Daniel nodded, pride flickering in his eyes. That's a good start. They spent the morning talking about small things, the weather, Daniel's classes, the book Emily had been meaning to finish. For once, their conversations weren't weighed down by silence or hidden pain. It was simple, honest, and comforting. Emily realized she hadn't laughed in months, but when Daniel made a dry joke about his college professor's obsession with Shakespeare, she found herself chuckling softly. The sound surprised her, but it felt good. Later that day, she took a walk around the neighborhood. The fresh air filled her lungs, clearing the fog in her head. Neighbors waved, unaware of the turmoil inside her home. She smiled politely, but inside she was telling herself something new. I can rebuild. I can start over. When she returned, Mark was gone. He had left without a word, but Emily didn't feel the usual sting of abandonment. Instead, she felt relief. His absence gave her space to breathe, to think. She sat at the dining table with a notebook and pen, writing down everything she wanted for herself. Not as a wife, not as someone's partner, but as Emily. She wrote words like freedom, strength, peace, joy. Each word was like a brick in a new foundation she was slowly building. Daniel watched her quietly from the hallway. Later, he approached her, curiosity in his voice. What are you writing? Emily smiled faintly. A list of things I want in my life. Things I forgot I deserved. Daniel leaned over to glance at the paper. That's powerful, he said. You're stronger than you think, Mom. Her eyes softened as she looked at him. You've been my strength through all this. I don't know how I would have managed without you. Daniel shook his head. You always had it in you. I just reminded you. As the days passed, Emily slowly began reclaiming pieces of herself. She cooked meals she loved instead of ones she thought Mark preferred. She went to the library and lost herself in books again. She reconnected with an old friend over coffee, laughing until her cheeks hurt. Each small step reminded her she was still alive, still capable of joy. Mark's presence in the house became more like that of a stranger. He worked late, avoided conversations, and slept in the guest room some nights. Emily no longer begged for answers. She let him drift, focusing instead on her own healing. One evening, while she was watering the plants on the porch, Mark finally approached her. His face was weary, his eyes carrying guilt. Emily, he began hesitantly, I know I've hurt you. I don't expect forgiveness right away. But I don't want to lose everything we built. Emily studied him quietly, her hand still holding the watering can. Everything we built? She repeated softly. Mark, I feel like I was the only one building. While I held the pieces together, you were tearing them apart. He flinched at her words, but she didn't soften them. For once, she spoke her truth without fear. I don't know if I can forgive you, she continued. But I do know I won't lose myself again trying to keep you. If this marriage continues, it will be because you choose me fully, not halfway, not in shadows. Mark looked at her, speechless. For the first time, he seemed to realize the strength she had gained. That night, Emily shared her feelings with Daniel. Your father says he doesn't want to lose us, but I don't know if I can ever trust him again. Daniel listened carefully before replying. Trust isn't about words. It's about actions. If he truly wants this family, he'll prove it. Until then, you keep focusing on you. That's what matters most. Emily nodded, tears brimming in her eyes. You sound more like the parent these days, she whispered. Daniel smiled softly. Maybe we're just taking turns. The following week, Emily joined a local art class. She hadn't picked up a paintbrush in decades, But as she dipped colors onto canvas, she felt something come alive inside her. Each stroke was messy, imperfect, but it was hers. The act of creating reminded her she was more than a wife. More than someone's shadow, she was a woman with passions, with dreams. When Daniel saw her first painting, he grinned. "It's beautiful," he said honestly. "I can see you in it. Strong and colorful." Emily laughed, a real laugh this time. "It's a start," she said. With every passing day, she grew lighter. The pain didn't vanish overnight, but it no longer controlled her. She still had moments of grief, moments where she questioned her worth, but she faced them with resilience. And each time Daniel reminded her, "It's all right, just go with it," she believed him a little more. By the end of that week, Emily felt something she hadn't in years: hope. Hope that her future could be different, brighter. Hope that even if her marriage ended, her life wouldn't. Hope that love could still exist, even if it wasn't in the form she once knew. But deep down, a question lingered. Would Mark rise to meet her strength, or had their story already reached its final chapter? Emily stood at the edge of her garden one crisp Saturday morning, her eyes drifting over the flowers she had planted with care. The colors were vibrant, alive, untouched by the storm inside her home. As she stood there, she realized something important. Life didn't stop for pain. The world kept blooming, moving, and changing, no matter how broken her heart felt. That thought gave her a strange sense of peace. She was ready to make a choice. For weeks, she had danced around the truth with Mark. He stayed quiet, avoiding long conversations, sometimes trying small gestures, bringing her coffee, asking about her day, but none of it felt real. The trust was gone, and without trust, Emily felt like she was living with a stranger. One evening, after finishing her art class and feeling a small surge of courage, she asked Mark to sit with her in the living room. He hesitated but agreed, his shoulders heavy, his eyes tired. Daniel wasn't home that night, which gave them the privacy she needed. Emily took a deep breath. "Mark, we can't go on like this. The silence, the distance, it's worse than the truth." He shifted uncomfortably, his fingers fidgeting. "I know," he admitted. "I've been wrong. I broke something I don't know how to fix." Emily's voice was calm but steady. "Do you want to fix it?" He looked at her, and for a moment, she saw a flicker of the man she once knew. "Yes," he whispered. "I do. I don't want to lose you." Her heart ached at his words, but she didn't let them sway her too easily. "Wanting isn't enough, Mark. I need actions. I need honesty. And I need to know why I should trust you again." Mark swallowed hard, his eyes wet. "Because I know I was a fool. That woman, it was nothing compared to you. I was selfish. I felt like I was fading, and instead of talking to you, I chased something empty. It was the biggest mistake of my life." Emily closed her eyes, his confession slicing through her. She wanted to believe him, but her wounds were still raw. "Do you understand what that did to me?" she asked quietly. "For years, I carried this marriage on my back. I thought I wasn't enough. And now I know you chose someone else. That pain doesn't go away with an apology." Mark reached for her hand, but she pulled it back gently. "Then tell me what I can do," he pleaded. "I'll do anything." Emily stood, her chest rising and falling with deep breaths. "Here's what you can do. You can give me space. You can stop pretending everything is fine. You can go to counseling with me, or by yourself. And you can prove, through actions, that you're willing to fight for this marriage. If you can't do that, then we're done." Mark nodded slowly, his face pale but serious. "I'll do it. I'll prove it." The conversation ended there, heavy but necessary. Emily went upstairs, her heart torn but strangely relieved. She had finally spoken her truth. That night, when Daniel returned, she shared what happened. He listened quietly, his expression thoughtful. "Do you think he'll change?" Daniel asked carefully. "I don't know," Emily admitted. "But I gave him a chance. Not for him this time. It's for me. I need to know I tried everything before I walk away." Daniel reached for her hand. "Whatever you decide, I'll stand by you." The following days were strange. Mark kept his promise, at least at first. He booked a counseling appointment, and though he was nervous, he went. He came home early some nights, helping with dinner or asking about Emily's art class. But Emily didn't let herself be swept away. She watched him carefully, waiting to see if his actions matched his words. Meanwhile, Emily continued rebuilding her own life. She painted more, filling the house with colors and shapes that reflected her emotions, sometimes chaotic, sometimes hopeful. She met her friend Susan for coffee every week, sharing laughs that reminded her she was still capable of joy. One afternoon, Susan asked gently, "Do you think you'll forgive him?" Emily stirred her tea, staring at the steam. "I don't know. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about deciding if I want to carry this pain forever or let it go. Right now, I'm not sure which I'm ready for." Susan nodded with understanding. "Whatever you choose, make sure it's for you, not for anyone else." That night, Emily thought long and hard. Her decision wasn't just about her marriage. It was about her identity, her freedom, and her future. She realized something powerful. No matter what happened with Mark, she was no longer the same woman who had stayed silent for years. She was stronger now, more aware of her worth. When she finally drifted off to sleep, she felt calm. Tomorrow she would continue walking the path of healing, whether it led her back to Mark or away from him. But deep inside, Emily knew one thing for certain. The final decision was close, and it would change everything. The weeks that followed were the most defining of Emily's life. For the first time in years, she wasn't moving on autopilot. Each day, she woke up with purpose, determined to rebuild herself piece by piece. She kept painting, filling canvases with colors that told the story of her healing. She spent more time outside, walking the neighborhood trails, breathing deeply, letting her lungs and her soul feel lighter. She even started volunteering at the local library, helping with children's reading sessions. Every smile, every small thank you reminded her that she still had so much to give to the world. Mark, to his credit, made some effort. He began attending counseling sessions, sometimes with her, sometimes alone. In the beginning, he was awkward and defensive, but slowly he began to admit his flaws. He apologized more than once, each time with genuine regret in his eyes. He stopped staying late at work, stopped leaving his phone face down on the counter. He tried to be present. But Emily had learned to be cautious. She no longer accepted words at face value. She watched for consistency, for the slow proof of change. One night, after a joint counseling session, they sat in the car in silence. The streetlights cast soft shadows across Mark's face. He finally broke the quiet. "Emily, I know I can't undo what I did. I can't erase the hurt. But I want to earn your trust again, even if it takes the rest of my life." Emily turned to him, her voice calm but firm. "Mark, I don't doubt you want that. But the question isn't if you want to fix us. It's if I want to stay. And I'm still figuring that out." Mark's face fell, but he nodded. "I understand." At home, Emily sat alone in her studio, staring at a half-finished painting. The canvas was divided into two halves. One side dark, stormy, chaotic. The other side lighter, full of warm colors breaking through. She realized the painting was her life, a contrast between pain and hope, past and future. For the first time, She saw clearly what she wanted. The next morning, she called Susan and invited her for coffee. As they sat at their favorite cafe, Emily shared everything she had been holding in. "I don't hate him," she admitted. "I don't even think I stopped caring. But I can't go back to who I was before." That woman stayed quiet, accepted scraps of affection, lived in shadows. "I'm not her anymore." Susan reached across the table and squeezed her hand. "Then you know what you have to do." That evening, Emily sat down with Daniel before speaking to Mark. She wanted her son to hear it first. Daniel listened intently, his eyes searching hers. "So, what are you going to do?" he asked. Emily took a deep breath. "I'm going to end it. Not out of anger, not out of revenge, but because I need freedom. I need to live fully again. Staying with your father would always feel like living in the shadow of betrayal. I want light now." Daniel's face softened with pride. "I'm proud of you, Mom. You're choosing yourself. That's the bravest thing you could do." Tears welled in her eyes. "I couldn't have gotten here without you. You've been my rock through all of this." That night, when Mark came home, Emily asked him to sit at the dining table. Her voice didn't shake this time. Her heart was steady. "Mark," she began, "we've spent weeks trying to mend something that broke a long time ago. I've watched you try, and I appreciate the effort. But the truth is, I don't see a future for us anymore. I can't keep living in a marriage where trust has been shattered. I'm choosing to let go." Mark's face crumpled, pain flashing across his eyes. "Emily, please don't say that. I'll change. I'll do anything." She shook her head gently. "This isn't about whether you can change. It's about me. I need peace. I need joy. And I can't find that here anymore." For a long moment, silence filled the room. Finally, Mark lowered his head and nodded. "If that's what you need, I won't stop you." Emily felt a strange calm wash over her. There were no fireworks, no screaming, no dramatic end. Just clarity. She had chosen herself. In the days that followed, Emily began the process of separation. It was hard, emotional, and exhausting, but it was also freeing. She leaned on Daniel and Susan, finding strength in their unwavering support. She filled her home with light, her paintings covering walls that once felt bare. Slowly, the house began to feel less like a cage and more like her sanctuary. Months later, Emily stood in front of her finished painting, the one divided between dark and light. She had added the final touches. A path cutting through the storm toward the brighter side. It felt like her life on canvas. Daniel, standing beside her, smiled. "It's beautiful. It's you." Emily looked at him, her eyes shining. "It's us," she said softly. "We made it through." And with that, Emily stepped into a future she had chosen for herself, uncertain, but filled with hope, strength, and the promise of new beginnings. She wasn't defined by betrayal anymore. She was defined by resilience, by love for herself, and by the courage to say, "It's all right, just go with it."